Applying for interim funding. We all recognise that in schools nothing stands still. Children arrive unexpectedly, sometimes their needs change without warning, or sometimes their circumstances can change. Leaving schools needing urgent help to ensure that the children are safe and effectively supported. Interim funding represents a short-term financial support which is designed to allow schools to manage unexpected situations and enable children to access the education they need. All applications for interim support are considered by the SEN panel. Although the criteria are currently under review, currently the support arrangements are clearly established. There are 3 situations which are considered by the panel, and your application should be clearly marked to meet one of these situations. Situation 1. There's been a sudden change in a child's behaviour or in circumstances, and a child or young person's behaviour is of such extreme concern that they require adult support to avoid significant risk to themselves or other children or adults at school. The criteria refers to a sudden change, so please be aware that a long-term or slowly increasing need may not be successful, as the panel may well feel that the school should refer immediately for an EHC assessment. Please bear in mind that in any referral for an EHC assessment, you can still request interim funding through the assessment. However, if the behaviour or the presentation of need is completely new, this will be viewed sympathetically. For example, family breakdowns or move resulting in previously unseen behaviours, transitions to a new class or a new year group, a new school, which result in markedly different behaviours, or trauma-based events that affect the child in school and affect the child's access to learning or to the environment. Situation 2. The child here has developed or has a medical condition which necessitates a high level of adult support to enable them to attend school safely. It is likely that such a request here would be accompanied by a request for an EHC assessment, or that interim funding would facilitate meeting the child's exceptional needs at SEND support, whilst a request for an EHC assessment is drafted or relevant information is collated. Interim support here should not be requested for support purely for curriculum access or to support individual programs, or where the child's needs have been known over a long period of time. So, for example, a successful application may relate to a new or sudden diagnosis of epilepsy, a medical change following an accident or a trauma, even a cancer diagnosis. Here the school needs exceptional support to allow the child to safely access education, but it's where these needs had not previously been known. To underline this, it would not be appropriate for a child receiving a new diagnosis of autism or dyslexia, etc., as here the label is only formalising what has already been known, and it is very likely that the needs of the children in this category would already have been supported by the school over time. And again, an EHC referral for assessment would be much more appropriate. Situation 3, the last of the situations. Here, the school has no prior knowledge of the child. So children about to start school where there have been no previous knowledge of the child, children moving from other local authorities or parts of the United Kingdom where issuing of EHCs is limited, but where the level of the child's needs is such that they would clearly be expected to have an EHC plan in Redbridge, or children moving from abroad where there is evidence of special educational need. So again, this would not be appropriate if a child was already known in another setting or another school where transition has been planned and where documents, information, etc. has been shared. It could be that one of our professional agencies are already involved and also able to support the transition into the new school. Here it is likely to be judged that an EHC assessment should have been requested because there is sufficient evidence already available to the school to support this process. It isn't usually appropriate to request support before the child enters support, as the panel will need to clearly understand the true level of need that the child is presenting with, the reasonable adjustments the school is having to make to include the child effectively, and will need evidence of the personalised offer that the school has created. Without this, it's very difficult for the panel to decide the true level of support that the school requires. It will not be sufficient to say an LSA is required. You will need to explain why, for how long, and the purpose of the support, and most of all, the likely impact that this support will provide. The panel will also want to see that the school has proactively sought or is seeking support from all appropriate outside agencies, and will need to see how this advice will be or is being acted upon. There are occasions where it is agreed that interim support is appropriate, but the panel are left unable to provide the correct amount of support without further evidence. Please do not think that if this occurs, the panel is saying no. It is simply asking for the evidence to enable them to make the correct and accurate decision to give the school the correct level of support. The interim funding is granted for a fixed period of time, usually 1 term or 2 terms. The level of additional support is agreed in direct response to the information provided by the school. Please remember to evidence how the support will be used, the impact it will have, and the level of support already provided by the school. This should be demonstrated through an accurate and costed provision map. Although the panel will usually ask for a full EHC referral within 2 terms of the agreed start date, in some cases interim funding may prevent the need for long-term support, as thus additional resource may enable the school to take positive action to settle or manage a situation and enable the pupil to go on and learn with greater independence. Therefore, it should not only be considered for those pupils with long-term learning needs, as early intervention can often prevent that need. Interim funding should not be reviewed as an alternative or a shorter route or to replace an EHC plan. Children with high or complex needs should be referred for assessment as soon as possible to ensure they receive the support they require in support of their long-term learning needs. And as already said, interim funding can be requested through the EHC process if the situation is urgent. On occasions, the panel may ask for additional information before agreeing any level of funding. As already said, this will happen if the needs of the child are evident, but the information provided is not sufficient, if there's not sufficient clarity or detail. Therefore, please provide concise but detailed evidence at all times through this process. Finally, please be aware that interim support is discretionary. It is not part of a statutory process, therefore there is no recourse to an appeal. However, the team is always open to further communication and further evidence if the schools feel that they have not considered some element that is presenting in school. All requests for interim and exceptional funding should be sent to the email address shown on the presentation. They will then be allocated to a case officer and the process will begin. I hope this helps you to identify those children who may benefit from interim support, but I stress that this should be always seen as a short-term measure, moving towards further identification of needs, to settle a process, to settle a child into school, or as a pathway towards long-term learning support to ensure our children receive the best possible allocation in your schools. Thank you for listening.